Ready? Yeah. So we are looking at the academic module today, writing task 1, describing a process. Okay, so that's going to be our specific topic today. We're going to look at the structure that you need to use, and we're also going to look at the kind of language and some of the grammar that the examiners are looking for when you get this kind of question. Okay, so this is our example question here, okay, which you may have seen before. Very typical manufacturing process. They can also be natural processes. So 20 minutes you're advised to take for the task 1, and the minimum word count is 150. Okay, there is no maximum word count, and you don't particularly need to write much more, but you must make sure that you don't write less than 150 words. Okay, and basically you are describing the diagram that you can see. No, you shouldn't be putting any analysis or interpretation or opinion in this. It's just a pure description. Okay, so let's have a look at what's going on here. It's always good to spend a couple of minutes at the beginning just making sure that you understand the process. Some of them are quite complicated before you start writing. Okay, so let's look at a few questions together. So what exactly are we describing here? Can you tell me what is the, okay, good, yeah, so production, what are we producing? Okay, yeah, so the production of cement, which then goes on to the production of concrete, okay. And is it a linear process or is it a cyclical process? Okay, very good, Cindy. Yeah, this is a linear process. You can also get cyclical ones. A lot of the natural life cycles or natural phenomenon are cyclical processes. So it's very good to just mention that because it's good vocabulary. And how many, if we look at the first picture, the cement production, how many stages can you see in that one? It's always caused a bit of controversy. Yeah, well, we've gone for 4 or 5, I think. Yeah, Alfonso, I think you're right down to the 4 or 5, including the bagging. And then the concrete production is really just 1 stage. Okay. So yeah, a bit of variety there. Kind of depends on how you look at it. But it is very important that you include everything that is on the diagram. You can't miss anything out when you're doing the diagram or the process question. Okay. Okay, what's the very first step altogether? What are we doing first of all? Okay, good. Yeah, so we're crushing limestone and clay. Okay, that's the very first one. And what is the very last stage right at the end? Okay, so we bag it. That's the end of the cement production. But what's the end of the concrete production? Is the mixing. Good. Yeah, so the mixing to create the concrete. Okay, so those are the kinds of questions that you want to ask yourself before you start writing, and make sure you've got a good understanding of the different steps, you know, the process and where it goes before you start writing. Okay, good day, Adiola. So and there's a particular kind of grammar that the examiners are always looking for with the process, any of the processes. Okay, very good, Alexis. So whatever you are doing, whether, you know, it be the natural process, the man-made process, it's going to be present simple. Okay, no continuous forms. It's very important. I get a lot of continuous forms. Just make sure you're using simple forms. And yes, you're right, Inez and Vidit. You will be using mainly, or I think in this case, all passive voice, because we're focusing on the object. We're not focusing on the person who does it. Okay. If, again, it's a natural process, you'll be using more active verbs, probably a mixture of active and passive, but always present simple. Okay. All right, so let's have a look at the structure. So we generally have, well, three main parts: introduction, overview, and the body. Always good to divide the body up into 2 paragraphs, if it makes sense. Okay. And the overview can also be at the end of your answer. Okay, so you have 2 options of where you put the overview. Doesn't matter, but do make sure you are putting it in a separate paragraph and that it's very clear. Okay, so what are we going to put in the introduction? I think a couple of you already answered this question. You're ahead of me. What's the form for the introduction? Okay, very good. Yeah, so we're going to give the topic of the diagram by paraphrasing the task question. Okay, what do we put in the overview? Okay, very good, Mohammed. Yeah, and Cindy, the main features. Okay, and the main steps. All right. And then what do we put in the body? Put some in. What kind of information? It's kind of giving you, yeah, okay, so all of the specific steps without missing anything else. And we also need to make sure that we link these together to show a clear process from beginning to end. Okay. So yes, exactly, Alexis. Sequence is really important when it comes to the diagram. Okay, so that is your structure. It's going to be the same, whatever the question. It's also the same for all the other type of task ones in the academic. So you don't need to think about that. You just use that format. Okay. So focusing on the introduction again. So as you said, we need to paraphrase the question. But remember, that's not just synonyms. Don't focus too much on just using synonyms because that can get a bit strange or a bit, you know, it's quite difficult. You can also use grammar. You can change active to passive. You can change the structure of the sentence. You can change the form of the word, turn it from a noun to a verb. So there's lots of different things you can do to paraphrase, as well as synonyms. So, you know, don't be focused too much on just like replacing one word with another. Okay. You have to be very accurate. That's very important with the task one. And you're just putting the beginning and the end of the production. You're not talking about any of the steps in between. Okay, so let's paraphrase the question together. Okay, very good. So shows, always a good one to use is illustrates. Depict is another nice word to use. Yes, very good, Mohammed. You could say provides information about, that would work too. So we've got stages here. Okay, very good, Neo. So we can use steps. Phases is another option. So that works quite well as a synonym for steps. Involved in, yeah, okay, Alexis is already there. So we got, instead of saying the cement making process, we can say cement production. We can say manufacturing, like you put there. So we've got a lot of good options in terms of paraphrasing the question. Okay. Okay, and then how cement is used to, okay, good. So then we can use make here, okay, or we can use manufacture. So again, just mixing it up means that we're not repeating the same information. And in the question, we've got building purposes. Okay, very nice, Dolores and Safa, so construction. Okay, so in this case, you know, we've got good, accurate synonyms and changes that we can use, okay? And that's it. That's all you need for the introduction. It's one sentence, maximum two, but to be honest, it's likely to only be one sentence, okay? But we do have a complex sentence there. Then we move on to the overview, okay? And just to kind of give you a bit of information about how the examiners mark it. So we're going to look now at band 5, 6, and 7, because that tends to be where most people fall. So if you do not have a clear overview, the maximum you're going to get in the task achievement is a 5, okay? So it must be, you must have an overview, but it must also be a clear overview, okay? And we'll look at how you make it clear in a moment. Another point there that's very, very important, at the beginning it says recounts detail mechanically. This means you just list what happens without using any interesting language or interesting structures to join the information together. So be very, very careful. It might seem like something simple to do, but if you just say, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, you know, you will again only get a maximum of a band 5 for your task achievement, okay? Band 6, you have an overview and you have the right information in the overview. Band 7, you are making a clear distinction between the overall trends, the overall stages, and the detail and the data which you put only in the body, okay? So, you know, think very clearly about, you know, to get a band 7, that you've got to have a clear overview, and you've also got to be doing your detail in your body in an interesting way. So using complex sentences, a variety of words. Vidit, you're absolutely right there, okay? So let's look at the overview. We'll look at that in a moment, David, okay? So you can see how we've joined it together, okay? So what do we need to do in the overview? We need to summarize what we're doing. We need to say how many stages there are overall, and usually we give the first and the final stage, okay? So from to, and that will be enough for the overview for the process, okay? And always good, we're describing a manufacturing process, so clearly there is a purpose to this. We are creating something, there is an end product, so make sure you make that very clear, okay? So let's look at some words to put this in. So in, what's the whistling? Okay, very good. So in order to make cement, so clear purpose to open our overview, okay? So how many raw ingredients do we start with? Yeah, okay, we have 2 raw ingredients at the beginning. Okay, which are, okay, limestone and clay, which we can just put in brackets there. Okay, are processed in, this is where we get the controversy. Yeah, like you said, in 4 stages. There's 4 main stages: there's crushing, mixing, heating, and grinding, and then we have the bagging at the end, okay? Before being, what's the final stage? Okay, very good, Mohammed, bagged. Okay, so there's 4 stages, finishing with the bagging, okay? Okay, the 4 are the crushing, the mixing, the rotating, and the grinding. Okay, so that's 4 stages before being bagged, which is the last stage. So 5 altogether. Okay, good. Then we move on to the second one. So the cement is then mixed. Okay, very good. In specific proportions. We don't need to say what they are yet because that's detail. But we mix them with, okay, 3 other ingredients or 3 other materials to produce concrete. Okay, so we've got the make cement at the beginning, and then we've got produce concrete at the end. Okay, so an overview from the beginning to the end, but we don't have any detail about the different stages, and we don't have any detail like the percentages or the figures. Okay, they have to go into the body. Another key thing to get a good score for the task achievement is that you clearly separate the information in the overview, which is general, and the information in the body, which is very specific and detailed and has specific data with it. Okay, if you're in any way mixing those 2 things up, that's going to cost you a lot of marks for task achievement. Okay, so a very clear overview, and you put it in a separate paragraph. Again, that makes it clear. Okay, don't mix it in with any of the other paragraphs. Okay, so now we move on to the details. So this is the body. Okay, and we look at how we can do this in an interesting way, not in a mechanical way. Okay, so it's going to be a very logical process, starting from the first stage, ending with the last stage. That should be fine. And the vocabulary that the examiners are looking for in this type of task 1 is the sequencing words. Yes, exactly. And you're going, so things like firstly, the next step is, after that, following this stage. That's the vocabulary, the specific vocabulary that you need to make sure you're using to get a good mark for lexical resource. Variety, don't repeat the same linking phrases, the same sequencing words. Make sure that you are changing everything all the time. Exactly, Adiola, you need a range of vocabulary. That's what they're looking for. Okay. And as we mentioned before, in this case, we are looking at passive forms, we're looking at the present simple, and we are looking at paraphrasing some of the words in the diagram. You will often find that the words in the diagram are nouns, and you are going to need to change all of those nouns to verbs. Okay. So that's something to think about. Is it all nouns? And then in that case, I'm just going to transfer those from crusher to crush. It's not so difficult here, but you know, heater, heat, grinder, we're going to grind the materials. Okay, so focus on the verbs in the in your answer, not on nouns. Okay. So we've got here the first paragraph. So we've got a clear division here. It's quite, I think, logical to put the cement production in one paragraph and the concrete production in a second paragraph. And that makes a nice clear distinction. Easier for the examiner to read when you divide it up. Okay. So the only things missing from this description are the verbs, which are on the left-hand side. So we have to put these, remember, in the present tense. We're using the passive, but we do use some other forms of the word. So you do need to pay attention to that. Okay, good. Nyungung and Salwa, you're there already. So the first stage involves crushing. Okay, so we get to use here involve plus an ing form. Works very, very nicely. Okay, and then we have a powder, which, okay, not put, is combined. Okay, you could put it into the mixer, then you'd have to say to mix it, but a combine is a nice way of using a different word than mixer. So you can show the examiner you're not depending on that word, mix. You can use a synonym for that, which is combined. So there we have our present simple passive voice. Okay, so this powder, okay, remember this is a manufacturing process. You could say combined together, Vidit, that would be fine, combined or combined together. Okay, is passed. Thank you, Dolores. Yeah, because it's being forced. It's not choosing to do it itself. It's being passed through by the machine. Okay, so we are using is passed. Okay, through a rotating heater before. Okay, very good. Being converted isn't quite right, but being ground. Okay, remember we're using a passive form, not grinding. It's not doing it itself. Being ground into cement. Okay, so grind is one of those that's irregular. And after before, we also need to use a participle. Okay, then the final product. Okay, packed works as well. Is put or is packed is very nice. Into bags, ready for use. Okay, so we're using our passive voice in the present simple, but we're also using a participle clause. So we're also using being ground for a bit of variety. We're also using an ing form after involves. So we're not just using passive in every single sentence. Yeah, you could say sealed, but you could say sealed in bags, sealed within bags, something like that. Yeah, or stored. We're moving on to the concrete part, Ali, don't worry. Okay, so try and vary your verb forms. Don't just put them in that form, but try and use some participles, things like that. Okay. Then we're going to look now at some of the language. This is the first paragraph where we're talking about the cement production. So it's the first paragraph in the body. Okay. I wouldn't really use flow, Simona. It would need to be a liquid to be flow, and in this case, it's kind of like a powder. So flow, it isn't quite right. Okay. So what kinds of sequencing phrases are we using in this first body paragraph? Okay, yeah, so the first stage, okay. What else are we using? Okay, good, then we have then, okay, and exactly before, followed by an ing, and then the final product. Okay, so we've got a good range of different linking phrases there. Okay, going back to the mechanical reporting, basically what you need to do to avoid that is to use complex sentences and to use a variety of sentences. Okay, so in this case, we have which, so we have a relative clause, we have before being, so we have a participle clause, we have ready for use, so we have an additional phrase there. So we're not just saying the clay is crushed, it is mixed, it is passed. That's mechanical reporting, okay? Just saying the same sentence form again and again. So make sure that you are using complex sentences and that you are using different types of sentence, okay? There's lots of different ways you can join your sentences with conjunctions, relative clauses, that kind of thing, okay? So now we're going to move on to the second body paragraph. So logically speaking, this would be the concrete production, okay? In some cases, it's not so obvious where to make the break, but it's still good to break up the body usually into maybe 2 paragraphs, okay? Very nice, and it's the second diagram presents, okay? Yes, David, so we need good grammar, we need linking devices, we need different kinds of sentence structures. That's the main thing to focus on, okay? So now we describe the second diagram. And in the second diagram, we can see that we've got percentages. So we need to make sure that we include those in the answer. Okay, so any detail which is on that diagram, it might be percentages, it might be numbers, it might be temperatures, it might be periods of time. Anything that's on there, make sure that you include that in your answer. If you don't, you haven't put in all of the detail that they are looking for. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So now we're clearly highlighting that we're moving on to concrete here. But you could say in the second part, or turning to concrete production, that would be fine. Okay, good. So to produce, to manufacture, to make, whatever you've already used, make sure you don't repeat it. You use a different verb, okay? So the cement is added to a large machine we've got there. So we're not just saying concrete mixer, we're using the word machine, which is known as a, where's the name? Yeah, concrete mixer, Doris, thank you. Known as a concrete mixer, okay? Along with, okay, good, 3 other ingredients, okay? And now we're going to go on to name those ingredients, okay? So what's the first one? What's the small stones? Okay, good, gravel. Okay, so gravel, and now we're going to go into the quantities. So accounts for, okay, so 50%. Okay, Sarush, very good, excellent. And Artyom and Safa, if you can turn the percentage into a fraction, again, you're showing your ability to manipulate the language. It's very easy to put 50%, but you know, not everyone will be able to say for half of the mixture. Okay, so put, you know, 1, you don't have to do it with all of them, but you know, 1 or 2 of the percentages into fractions. Same for the charts and the line graphs. Always try and put some of your percentages into fractions. Okay, so that accounts for half of the mixture. How can we then link on to the next one? What's the next word missing? So this is half of the mixture. Okay, could be, but we're having a kind of comparison. We haven't quite got there yet. So this is, if we're having 2 different types. Ah, yes, Salwa, thank you very much, Ansarish, while. Okay, so this is at the same time. We're not, there's no different order going on here. It's all the same. So gravel accounts for this, while the remaining ingredients are, okay, sand, cement, and water. Okay, and here it's, you know, easier just to put the percentages, but again, you could say a quarter, or you could say a tenth if you wanted to change it up. Okay, so and then finally, the mixer does what? Okay, very good. Rotates. There's always going to be a bit of maths in task 1, Jabber. I'm sorry. Makes you hungry, doesn't it? The mixer, yes, what rotates or spins or turns to combine these materials. Okay, so sometimes you've got arrows and things like that on the diagram. So make sure you notice those arrows and make sure you include that in the information. And again, you've got 2 things rotating here. So if you already used rotate in the cement production, use turn, use spin, revolve, adiola, don't repeat the same language, okay? And then, so we're getting to the end now, so it combines the materials, okay, ultimately producing concrete, or finally, Shafwa is fine, now machine, producing concrete, okay? So again, a clear process from beginning to end there. And again, going back to the mechanical thing, so we've got to, so we've got one of these phrases like in order to. We've got known as, that's another participle clause. We've got while, so we've got a conjunction. We've got producing, so we've got another participle clause. Yeah, so as to only is another great expression to use. So again, we are not just listing what happens in simple sentences. We're using, good, yeah, in as things like as soon as, when, where, it works sometimes, yeah, once, having, having been mixed, these are all really good ways of joining your sentences together. So make sure you're not just listing the steps. And similarly, when you do the chart or you do the line graph, don't just list the steps, okay? Don't just say it went up, it went down, it turned around, yeah? Put them in interesting sentences, put them in different types of complex sentences and not just the same complex sentence. No good just adding and all the way, but change the kind of sentence and make sure you're able to use all those different kinds of conjunctions and linking phrases, prepositions to do that. Okay, so and we also have again here different types of linking phrases to join our sequences together. Okay, so there you can have a look at that. That's it all together. So 151 words. We're just over the word count, but that's completely fine. Don't need to put too much. And actually processes, it's pretty hard to write more than like 155 because they're not that complicated. Okay. So just a few final tips before we move to the questions. Don't start writing straight away. Really, really important. Any of the task ones or the task twos for that matter, when you're doing the writing, think about it first. Make sure you understand what's going on before you start writing. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense and it'll be obvious it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Keep it to 20 minutes. You do need 40 minutes for that task too. Don't waste time counting words. Know what 150 words looks like in your handwriting. It's a waste of time to count words during the exam. You don't really have any time. And again, practice. If you can download the official IELTS answer sheet, if you practice on that, you can see exactly what a good length answer looks like on the paper. So you won't need to count. Okay. And as always, the more you practice, the more different types of examples you see, the easier it will be when you come to the exam, the less likely it is that you're going to have some kind of surprise when you get there. Okay. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Annelie, for the presentation. Great job. Thank you. And yeah, thank you guys for giving us your answers, suggesting different vocabulary, some really nice examples there. So well done. We are going to take a look at some of your questions now in the Q&A. So if you do have any specific questions about describing a process or a diagram, or if you've got any general questions about the IELTS test at all, you can add them to the Q&A now and we'll discuss them in a moment. So great. Thank you guys. Thanks for that feedback. It's lovely to hear. Thank you, Rose and Shubham and Yamina. Thanks for that. Excellent. So guys, we're going to discuss your questions in a moment. I would just like to do a tiny bit of promotion for our premium services, which we offer on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. We offer a writing evaluation service. So if you're interested in having a qualified examiner read over your writing and give you an estimated score along with feedback on your strengths and your weaknesses, you can submit an example of your writing. It could be task 1 or task 2 onto our website, and we can review that for you and give you a written report, giving you lots of detailed feedback. We offer a similar service for speaking as well, where you can book a mock test with an examiner. We'll go through the test with you and we'll tell you what you can do to improve your score. So if you are thinking about taking the test soon, that could be something really useful for you to identify any areas of weakness that you have. I've put the link to that in the chat, so feel free to check that out. I've also put a link to our IELTS Explained video lessons, which focus on reading and listening and going through the different question types in the test and what you can do to answer them. So please check that out if you're interested. And yeah, we'll dive into some of your questions. So Zara, I can see your question there about how to prepare for the writing test. If you want to be a bit more specific, perhaps we can help you with that question, and hopefully we'll get some ideas for that now. So let's see, Annelie, are you ready for the first question of the evening?
Ready.
Yep, good. So this question is from Alexis. Alexis is asking, hello, is it all right to put parentheses or brackets in the writing?
In the task 1, if you want to put your figures, it's perfectly fine to put them in brackets. Yeah. I wouldn't use them in any other way, but if it's that kind of very specific information, then it's totally fine to use it in the task 1. I wouldn't use it in task 2.
Yeah, often brackets are sort of sometimes thought to be a sign of like not thinking, so not organizing your thoughts so well that you have to kind of add something else. So probably in task 2, maybe better to avoid. But yeah, I would agree, as you said, Annelie, especially for perhaps like adding specific examples, whether it's a specific number or you can see in the example, in the overview, we've said, you know, in order to make cement, 2 raw ingredients, and then those specific ingredients are in brackets, and that would be fine. Yeah, cool. Let's see. Anne is asking, can you give us some more about sequencing vocabulary, any kind of linking or sequencing expressions that we can use to, I guess, specifically in the process description?
Yeah, so you want to have, first of all, some linking phrases, a couple for the first one, so like to begin with, or the first stages, or first of all. Then you want to have a really good range for all the intermediate stages. So that would be then, next, following that, after that, those kind of expressions. And then, you know, finally, ultimately, the last stage is something for the last stage. Then in addition to those linking phrases, it's good to have a range of conjunctions that are related to things like that. So once, when, as soon as, after, before, those kind of expressions. As everything with IELTS, variety is very important. So make sure that you have enough so that you're not going to need to repeat yourself within the one answer.
Yeah, definitely. Just to add as well that it's not always essential to use one for every sentence. So, you know, you don't need to always say first, then, next, third, you know, after that. Sometimes it's okay to omit a linking expression, and because, you know, if your ideas are well connected and it's logical, then sometimes you can leave out the expression. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you there, Annelie. It's good to show that you can use a range of them as well.
Yeah, and things like this powder that we can see in the first one is another really good way of you're connecting it, but it's a different way without, you know, you're referring back. So this powder or these ingredients or things like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There are different types of cohesive devices, like the
Mhm,
pronoun reference using this,
mhm,
using the or a accurately as well to introduce new information. So Luna, that's one way that you can help to make your essays like less mechanical by
mhm,
using a broader range of linking expressions and cohesive devices. Yeah,
mhm.
hope that helps. Let's see, there's a question here from Cecilia, who says, I'm new to this class. So welcome, Cecilia.
Hi,
Thanks for joining
Cecilia.
us. Yeah, but I'm finding it difficult to chat and watch the video at the same time. Any suggestions for Cecilia? Guys, if you have any suggestions for how you balance that, if you could pop them in the chat, that would be great. It depends how you're watching. I think, Cecilia, if you're on a desktop or if you're on mobile, it might be a bit different. I know on my desktop here, I can make the chat go into one side of the
Mm.
screen. That might be an option for you. If you're watching on mobile, then uh, any suggestions, guys, for how you can balance that would be good to share with Cecilia, please. Okay. Let's see. So, question from Luna as well, who's asking, what about band 8 or band 9? Is this in reference to the overview, Luna? I think perhaps your question is like, what do I need to do to get a band 8 or 9 in my overview?
Mhm. Um, yeah, so very clear. It would have to be completely accurate in terms of the language. It would have to be completely accurate in terms of what you were discussing, not using any of the vocabulary or not, relying on the vocabulary in the question. Generally, those people who get 8s and 9s, it's like the whole thing just works really, really well. And there's nothing that distracts from the message. Everything is accurate, is completely accurate in terms of grammar, spelling, and it stands above the other examples that you get. So I think sometimes you get an answer and you just think, wow, this person has really gone beyond what we normally see, and that would be an 8 or a 9. And it's very rare for people to get a 9 in the writing. Yeah,
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very rare. And no, but I think it's unlikely that anyone would need a 9 unless they wanted to be an IELTS examiner. So,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think like for things like a 9 for cohesion and coherence, it's similar to what I was saying before,
Mm,
is that you need to use those cohesive devices, the pronouns, the linking expressions in a very subtle, natural
mm,
way so that they don't stand out.
mm,
You could, if you say, first, second, then, next, you might be using them accurately, but it won't sound very natural because you'll be
mhm,
overusing them. So
mhm,
it's a kind of balance, and it's especially for band 9, it can be tricky. But Safwan, I can see your question there. Is that a band 9 answer? Yes, it is. So
mhm,
you know it is possible, and it's not it's not some sort of magic unobtainable piece of
mhm,
writing. It just needs to be very clear and very accurate, and that's very difficult to write in 20 minutes,
mm.
which is the main thing. So excellent. Let's see. Question now from Shafwat. Shafwat is saying, is it essential to describe even a minor detail in task 1 in charts or tables? So do I have to describe every minor detail?
Okay, if we're talking about the line graph or the table or the bar chart, no, you don't have to describe every detail. And again, that's likely to end up being very mechanical. What you need to do is focus on the most interesting information. So what are the highest figures? What are the lowest figures? Which ones have a similar trend? Which ones have a very different trend? Are there any exceptions which stand out? So that's what you're really focusing on. You don't need to include every single detail. However, for the processes and for the maps, really you want to make sure that you're including everything that you can see there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly to answer your question, Zark, you can find the official IELTS answer sheets on the IELTS website. So if you go to the official IELTS website, British Council, IDP, you can download the answer sheets with the, that you'll be using
it's very easy.
as in the test. Yeah. Let's see, and thank you, Rose, for that suggestion for Cecilia. I hope it helps you there, Cecilia. Right, let's see. We have another question here from Reza. Reza is asking about using percentages in parentheses. Is it okay to put them in the parentheses as we've done here? Or is it better to put them in the sentence, and which one would get higher marks?
I don't think it's a question of which one would get higher. It's perfectly fine to put things like figures into brackets, and often it makes it clearer. So it would really be a question as if you were putting them in the sentence, how clear is your sentence? Are you ending up writing in a way that's a bit confusing because you're kind of creating information around what is essentially just 3 percentages. So be careful about losing clarity by doing that. It's completely fine just to put the figures in brackets. In this case, it's additional information. You've put it in, so that's great. You don't need to create any more around it.
Yeah, I would say if you were describing a chart or a graph or maybe a table where you were describing a lot of figures, giving a lot of different details, then you might want to try both just to add some variety, because if you're always just using the same way of referencing the specific number, then it might get a little bit repetitive. I think for here, the focus isn't really on describing specific numbers. So it's okay that we've just used one approach. But I think if you were describing a table, then maybe it would be good to include it within the sentence as well, just to show that you can really, and to avoid repetition. But yeah, it's a kind of minor comment there. Let's see. Thank you, Tricia, for putting that in to the chat, the answer sheet link. That's great. And thank you. I think Paulina, glad you enjoyed the webinar. Thanks very much. Yeah, and thank you too, Safa. Excellent. We have some more time to answer a few more of your questions. So we'll see how many we can get through in this session. Anonymous is asking, does the number of words matter in the exam?
Yes, the minimum number of words really, really matters. If you write an answer less than 150 for task 1 or less than 250 for task 2, you lose a lot of marks in task achievement. I mean, if you write, for example, 130 words, you're going to lose 2 band scores on your task achievement, and that can cause you a lot of problems. So be 100% over the minimum word count. However, you don't need to write much more than that. A longer answer is not necessarily a better answer. So, slightly over the minimum word count is perfectly okay.
Yeah, definitely. Anne is asking, how can I follow your videos? Anne, I've put the link to our YouTube channel in the chat. You can watch all of our videos and our lessons there. For our new lessons, you'll need to look on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. I've put the link to that in the chat as well, so you can catch any other lessons we're doing. Okay.
Jabber's hungry.
You getting hungry, Jabber? What's on the menu tonight? What are you gonna have? Yeah. So,
5 more minutes, Jabber.
Jabber,
You
yeah,
can do
yeah.
it. You can
Go.
hang on in there.
Food. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, why not? Let's see. Okay, so our next question comes from Parth. Parth is asking, what are the chances of this type of diagram in the exam? So I guess there are a range of different types of task 1 questions. How likely is it that the process description is going to come up?
Yeah, I feel like, and I don't know if you agree, Jamie, that the maps and the processes are becoming more common, and they used to be kind of quite occasional, but actually they're becoming now pretty much equal or almost equal with the ones that are based on figures. It's kind of impossible to say. You just do not know what's going to come up. So you need to be well prepared in all of those different types of task ones that you might get, because you just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I'd agree. It's hard to give you an exact, percentage chance, Parth, but, as Annelie said, it does seem that they're getting more likely. So it's good to be prepared for them as well. Great. Let's see. Question from Billenbeck. Billenbeck, you're asking, I don't know how to use different sentence forms. Could you suggest anything? How should I improve it? That's quite a challenging question, Billenbeck, without knowing, the types of language that you're struggling with. Is it grammar, like the tenses, or is it about making simple or complex sentences? There's a very wide variety of forms. So, I mean, I don't know if you have any advice you can give him here on improving grammar, I guess.
I was thinking maybe a webinar on complex sentences might be quite good. But if you're thinking of complex sentences, you need to try and use some sentences with conjunctions, some sentences with prepositions. Just try and be familiar with those different types of structures, using in order to. These are all different types of sentences, and that is going to give you the variety that you need, so you're not writing mechanically. But it's a big area, and it requires some work, but a grammar book will you got some visitors there.
I can see some kids outside doing trick or treat. Yeah, it is. Gonna have to get some sweets for them.
Yeah. But yeah, it was maybe a webinar on writing complex sentences, because I think that seems to come up. Maybe that's something people are not sure about, and having the variety there, because that's often lacking in people's answers in both parts.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we can look at in the future, is focusing on creating different types of complex sentences. So yeah, we'll definitely plan one of them. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I think we can do a couple more questions and then we'll get out of here for today. But a question from Manpojo is saying, is it okay to give a summary in task 1 questions?
Yeah, depends what you mean by a summary. You need to give an overview, and the overview is just the main ideas. For the process, the overview will have the number of stages, the first stage and the last stage. So, I mean, yes, in that sense, it's a summary, but that's what you need to include in the overview for the process. When it's the chart, the bar chart, the line graph, you are picking out the main trends. That's what you need to put in the overview. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's essential to have an overview.
Yeah, definitely. Quick question here from Luna. Do the essay sheets have lines on them, or are they blank?
They have lines. They're lined.
Yeah, And you saw the link that somebody put in the chat a bit earlier. You can download the official answer paper so you can practice with it yourself. Excellent. Thank you, Diana. Glad you enjoyed the lesson. It's really nice to hear. Thanks very much. Right, let's see. Guys, I'm afraid we are going to have to wrap up on that note. We've run out of time for this lesson. So thank you very much for joining us today, and a big thank you to you, Annelie, for presenting.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Great participation today. Go and have some sweets.
Yeah. Enjoy your Halloween if you celebrate Halloween where you are, and thank you very much for the feedback. That's great to hear. We do have a number more webinars coming up, so you can check out our website for more details. If you'd like to ask us any other questions we didn't cover today, you can add them as comments on our YouTube channel, and we will answer them that way. Okay, so thank you very much. Lovely to see you all, and yeah, hopefully see you again soon. And yeah, enjoy your dinners or a late snack wherever you are. Okay.
Eat well, Jebba.
Yep,
Thank you, Sarus. Thank you, everyone. Happy Halloween, Mariam. Take care,
Halloween.
everybody.
Cheers,
Have some
guys.
sweets. Bye.
Bye for
bye,
now.
bye.